Children are the light of their parents, a treasure, a hope, and the crystallization of love. They bring joy, dreams, and even the future. But sometimes fate cruelly snatches away the most precious things. 21 Black celebrities have endured a tragedy no one ever wishes for, losing a child to illness. Each story is a piercing agony, an irreplaceable loss. These little angels departed in silence, leaving behind an indescribable sorrow. Do you have the courage to watch this entire video and hear the heartfelt cries of parents who lost the children they loved most? 1. Gladys Knight. Losing her only son, the world collapsed before her eyes. Gladys Knight, the legendary voice, the Iron Lady of soul music. She weathered countless storms and life's upheavals, but nothing could compare to the most devastating blow, losing her only son, the one she cherished above all else. In 1963, Jimmy Newman came into the world, becoming the center of Gladys Knight's universe. Despite being a busy star, she never left her son alone. As songs like Midnight Train to Georgia played on the radio, Jimmy would sit quietly in the studio, his eyes full of admiration for his mom. From a young age, he'd demand a lullaby every night before bed, and Gladys never refused. Jimmy was her entire world. As he grew up, he stayed by her side, not chasing fame or the spotlight, just wanting his mother's happiness. He was her sole pillar of strength when she crumbled, the one who pulled her from the abyss whenever life weighed heavily on her shoulders. But on that fateful morning in 1999, the phone rang, shattering the peace. On the other end was a frantic scream delivering the news of death. The world collapsed around Gladys. Just the night before, they'd been chatting and laughing. Jimmy had even said, "Can you make that old dish for me tomorrow, Mom?" But overnight, he lay motionless on the floor, felled by a heart attack. Gladys rushed to the hospital, but the doctor only shook his head. It was too late. The son who always protected her was now just a cold, lifeless body. The funeral came, but Gladys was so overcome with grief she barely registered it. As the coffin was lowered, she collapsed by the grave's edge, clutching at it, her lips trembling as she begged her son to come back. But only silence answered her. After that day, Gladys vanished. No stages, no music, no contact with anyone. She locked herself in a room filled with old photos of her son. Years later, Gladys Knight returned to the stage. Her voice was as magnificent as ever, but her eyes no longer held life. Jimmy's departure took a piece of her soul, a void that could never be filled. 2. Stevie Wonder, losing a son at birth, a tragedy that silenced the world. The musical legend. Stevie Wonder, a genius who didn't need eyes to see the world, winner of 25 Grammys, creator of countless classic hits, is an immortal icon. But tragically, he couldn't foresee the most horrific loss of his life, losing his son, the sarcomas, the moment he first cried. In the 1970s, Stevie Wonder was at the peak of his career. He wasn't just a musical genius, but a man yearning for love. When he learned he was about to become a father, Stevie was overjoyed. He couldn't see the world, but he believed he could feel it more deeply than anyone, especially when it came to his child. He touched his wife's belly daily, smiling as he felt the baby move. He'd place his hand where his son was growing, whispering melodies no one else had heard. He prepared everything: the crib, clothes, tiny woolen mittens. For the first time, Stevie Wonder wished he could see, just to glimpse his son's face. Then the fateful day arrived. The hospital buzzed with hurried footsteps. Stevie stood outside the delivery room, hands clenched, heart pounding like a drum. He couldn't see, but he could hear the doctors, the nurses rushing around, the machines beeping urgently. A faint cry rang out. Stevie smiled. He reached out, waiting to hold his son. But then, nothing. Silence. He listened, waiting. But all that remained were piercing sounds, worried whispers, frantic beeps that stuttered and stopped. A deadly stillness. The son he'd never seen, the baby he'd sung to with love, was gone without ever being held by his father. They said it was infant respiratory distress syndrome, IRDS. His lungs were too weak, his breaths as fragile as mist. he fought for a few fleeting minutes before silently letting go of life. They say that night, Stevie sat in the room, arms clutching empty air. He listened, but there was nothing left to hear. No cries, no breaths, no tiny heartbeat he'd longed for. When loved ones came to console him, Stevie didn't speak, as if the world around him had gone mute. He only reached out, touching the blanket his son never got to use. At midnight, alone, he picked up his piano and played. Soft, mournful notes filled the air, like a breaking heart. No one knows what he wrote that night. But years later, Isn't She Lovely was born, a song for another child, though only he knew it carried all the love he'd longed to give the son he'd lost. 3. Al Green, losing a son in his arms, a shock that nearly ended a legend's career. Al Green, the king of soul, the man behind timeless hits like Let's Stay Together, melted the world with his emotion-drenched voice. But behind the stage lights lies a wound that never healed. He lost his son in his arms, a child who'd only just entered the world. In 1970, Al Green was riding high. He just bought a new house, signed a major recording deal, and best of all, became a father. Al Green Jr., his firstborn son, arrived healthy and chubby, a towering source of pride. Al once said that just hearing his son's breaths made all his exhaustion vanish. But that happiness didn't last long. Days after the birth, the baby struggled to breathe, couldn't nurse, and turned purple when he cried. Doctors diagnosed congenital diaphragmatic hernia. His lungs couldn't grow, his organs crowded his chest, crushing his ability to breathe. A deadly defect with slim odds of survival. Al panicked, begged for transfers, poured money into treatments. He canceled all his shows, staying by his son's side. Those who'd seen Al electrify stages couldn't bear watching him now, slumped on the hospital floor, hands gripping his head, face drained of color. That fateful night, he just left the studio and raced home to see his son. Opening the door, he saw the baby convulsing. His wide eyes looked up at his father, pleading for help. No time to call for help. No time to do anything. The baby stopped breathing in seconds. Al scooped him up, screaming for aid. But it was too late. His son died in his arms. Al sat motionless for hours, cradling his son's body, silent. He refused to perform, didn't step into a studio for 2 years. Demos were abandoned, contracts canceled. His voice vanished from the airwaves as if it had faded with his son's final cry. It took 2 years of wrestling with grief for Al Green to return. But no one heard the voice of a man in love with life anymore. Only pain, mournful notes, and an emptiness that lingered forever. 4. Patti LaBelle, the loss of a child that changed a legend's voice forever. Patti LaBelle, an icon of American soul, a woman whose powerhouse voice and unmistakable style moved millions. But few know that behind her dazzling shine, she once shattered completely from a single, fateful moment, the most agonizing second of her life. Back in the early 60s, Patti's career was taking off. Amid relentless tours and tense recording sessions, she still poured every spare moment into her firstborn son. The boy was angelic, with bright eyes and a smile that melted her heart. Patti once said that holding him each night gave her the strength to face any pressure the world threw at her. But this cruel life spares no one. One frigid winter night, the boy spiked a fever. Patti thought it was just a common cold. She laid a cool cloth on his forehead, sang him to sleep as always, pressed her face to his milk-scented hair, certain he'd be fine by morning. But in the dead of night, his breathing weakened, then stopped. She lifted him, calling his name in a panic. His body went limp, his skin turned ashen. In an instant, his heart ceased beating. At the hospital, doctors confirmed acute pneumonia. It progressed too fast to treat. Patti froze, her pain tearing her apart as she screamed. But after hours of anguished tears, she fell silent, cradling him, singing one last lullaby. After that blow, Patti nearly vanished from the world. For months, no one saw her, not even stepping outside. When she returned to the stage, her voice had changed. Every high note cracked, every pause choked with something unspoken. She never shared more about the son she lost, but everyone knew. From that day, Patti LaBelle was never the same. 5. Berry Gordy. Losing a son to cancer, Motown's powerful father fell silently. Berry Gordy, the king behind legends like Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, and Stevie Wonder, built an empire that turned Motown into an American cultural icon. But behind the power, wealth, and fame lies a wound that never healed. A wound named after his son. Before Motown, before he became Detroit's most powerful man, Berry just wanted a real home. When his firstborn son arrived, he felt he had it all. The boy was handsome, sharp, always clinging to his dad. He wasn't just a kid, he was the future, the reason Berry did everything. But life's no smooth Motown love song. One sunny afternoon, the boy was playing in the yard when he ran to his dad, wincing from leg pain. Berry figured it was a minor bump, a bruise that'd fade. It didn't. It spread, then swelled. Within days, he couldn't walk from the agony. Doctors diagnosed bone cancer, incurable. The malignant cells had dug in, ravaging his body, a death sentence for a kid who hadn't lived his childhood. Berry lost it. He flew his son everywhere, state to state, begging every doctor. But the answer was always the same. Let go. Time was short, just months to stretch it out. The boy suffered daily. Radiation made his hair fall out in clumps, his body withered, his eyes sank deep. Berry stayed up every night by the bed, holding his hand, helpless but to cry. On the final day, the boy rasped through broken breaths, struggling to say he was too tired. Berry pulled him close, softly singing the lullaby from his first night and his last. As the final note faded, the boy exhaled. His eyes closed. His hand fell slack. No breath, no heartbeat. From that moment, Berry was no longer whole. He kept working, still built the legendary Motown empire we know. But no one knew that each night he'd sit in a dark room, staring at the corner where his son's old toys still sat. And he'd whisper that song again, a song only he could hear, a song his boy would never hear back. 6. Quincy Jones, a wound that never healed from his baby daughter's death. Quincy Jones, musical genius, producer of timeless hits, a man who shaped America's music industry. He touched every peak, but there's one abyss he never climbed out of: the death of his daughter, the little angel he loved more than life itself. In 1967, Quincy was entering the most explosive phase of his career. Artists hunted him down, working with Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin. But that spotlight couldn't match the joy he felt most, his daughter's laughter when he came home. She was his whole world, a blazing light in a life full of pressure and noise. Quincy once believed nothing could break that happiness. Then fate struck mercilessly. She started tiring easily. Dizziness hit, her breath short after a few steps. Quincy grew puzzled, then frantic when she collapsed in his arms one March evening, unresponsive no matter how he called. They rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was a death sentence. End-stage congenital heart failure. No treatment. She wouldn't make it. Quincy broke. He pleaded, screamed, demanded transfers, sought every expert. No one dared promise a thing. The days that followed were hell. He stayed awake by her bedside, singing her to sleep in her final moments. At dawn on April 9th, her heart stopped. Just a flat, cold line on the screen, the last flicker of hope, shattered. Quincy lost his mind. He wailed, clutching her body, refusing anyone's touch. Doctors had to pry him away in his frenzy. From that day, Quincy lost himself. He still composed, still made music history. But behind the stage lights was a broken father. He'd sit silently in a dark room, replaying videos of her laughing, running, playing. No one saw him cry, but that pain never left. To Quincy, his little girl didn't die. She's just sleeping amid soft, low notes. 7. Eddie Leverett, the agony of losing a son. At the height of his career, Eddie Leverett, a towering name in soul music, commanded stages and won over millions with a voice brimming with power. But no stage victory was big enough to ease the pain of losing his beloved son Gerald, a star on the rise. In the mid-2000s, Gerald Levert, Eddie's son, was at his career's peak. A shining R&B star, he dazzled with a seductive, soulful voice. His albums topped charts, his songs tied to millions of fans. Eddie, the proud father, dreamed his son would carry on the musical legacy he'd built. They wrote together, performed together, and Eddie's greatest wish was to see Gerald become the next legend. But no one foresaw the brutal tragedy ahead. In the winter of 2005, Gerald grew exhausted even while sleeping. His body weakened, relentless coughs and chest pain stole his focus. But his career couldn't pause, and he kept performing despite fading health. On November 10, 2006, while prepping for a concert, Gerald collapsed in his dressing room. Acute pulmonary edema and cardiac hypertension, the doctors said. Eddie couldn't believe his ears. He sped to the hospital, praying for a miracle, but when he arrived, it was too late. Seeing his beloved son on that hospital bed, his body growing cold, was a blow Eddie could never overcome. Gerald's final moments, even in his father's arms, weren't enough for a goodbye. At just 40, in the prime of his career, he was now a fading shadow. Eddie stared at his son's face, unable to accept reality. The family lost their brightest star, and Eddie couldn't alter fate's cruelty. Gerald's death wasn't just a family loss, it ended a dream. For Eddie, this pain can't be erased or offset by any hit or award. Every time he steps into the studio, emptiness floods back. Every melody echoes with cries from the past. 8. Tina Turner, a son's death, a shock she could never forget. Tina Turner, the steel-willed woman, lived a stormy yet triumphant life. She overcame countless challenges to become a soul music legend, but she wasn't ready for the biggest tempest of all, the death of her son, Craig Turner. Craig Turner was her hope, her anchor in this turbulent life. Born from her violent marriage to Ike Turner, Craig shared a special bond with his mom. To Tina, he was everything, life's greatest gift. As he grew, Craig became an independent man, but never strayed far from her care. Tina hoped that no matter where life took them, her son would never suffer as she had. But life wouldn't grant her that wish. Craig wasn't one to show his feelings. He buried his pain deep, quietly facing sadness and depression. Tina, despite her boundless love, couldn't see the fractures in his soul. Signs of depression grew clearer, but Craig stayed silent. He endured alone, seeking doctors, trying to escape the shadow of his abusive father, but nothing changed. It was a battle he fought solo. On July 3, 2018, Tina got a call she'd never forget. Craig had chosen to leave this painful world. His sudden death stabbed her heart, crumbling everything in an instant. At just 59, an age ripe for more, he was gone in a dark moment. Tina couldn't believe it. It came too fast, leaving her no chance to act. Memories of Craig flooded back, his hugs, his voice calling her name in love. Now, only emptiness remained, a shattered heart. This pain became a wound that wouldn't heal, born from the horrific marriage she'd endured. No one foresaw its echoes reaching this far. 9. Oprah Winfrey. A child lost at birth, a tragedy no one knew. Oprah Winfrey, the media queen, a symbol of strength and power. From a poor, wounded girl, she overcame every trial with sheer will to become the world's most influential woman. But there's one scar even she couldn't heal. At 14, Oprah was a girl drowning in trauma. No one by her side, no one to shield her. Her life brimmed with pain, from years of abuse by relatives to horrors no child should bear. Then one day, she was pregnant, a child she didn't expect. How could a girl like her be a mother when she hadn't even grown up? Yet, despite the surprise, she chose to keep this tiny life. It wasn't at fault. Oprah thought this might be her only shot at giving and receiving love, a small family of her own. The day the pain hit, the sky loomed dark, as if warning her. Oprah went into premature labor at 7 months. The baby came amid her chaos, a boy, but he didn't cry or move. Oprah gazed at her son, her heart clenching. A tiny being, not yet able to open his eyes, already facing death. Pulmonary hemorrhage made his life too frail, too fleeting. His breath shortened, then stopped. Oprah held him, trembling, alone. no comfort came. The baby was taken away. No funeral, no grave to visit. It was as if it had all been a dark dream. Afterward, Oprah was sent to live with her dad in Nashville. The story of her son, lost at birth, was buried. No one spoke of it. No one asked. No photo, no keepsake, no name. But in Oprah's heart, that pain never faded. Every newborn she sees stirs memories of her short-lived son. That ache lingers, unsoothed, no matter the years. 10. Donnie McClurkin, a voice in faith that couldn't save his son from death's scythe. Donnie McClurkin, a man of faith, is the voice that has stirred the hearts of millions. Through songs brimming with the power of salvation and belief, he became a symbol of perseverance and unwavering trust in God. Yet, in his life, there's a pain no song could redeem: the death of his son. McClurkin had a small family, and his son was his only joy in life. In the 1980s, before his music career took off, this boy was a gift he believed God had bestowed upon him. But he never imagined that gift would be taken away before he could fully grasp its worth. His son suffered from severe asthma since birth. Each attack was a battle for every breath. In those moments, McClurkin could only place his hope in faith, in prayers, believing everything would be okay. He trusted in God, in the love he thought would carry his son through. But one freezing winter night, the unthinkable happened. This asthma attack wasn't gentle like the others. It was fierce and more powerful than ever. The boy coughed violently, writhed, then began to fade. McClurkin held him close, praying in a panic, but no matter how loud his pleas rang out, the child's life kept slipping away. It spiraled out of control fast. His son turned blue in his arms, and he knew the odds of survival were razor thin. He raced to the hospital. But by the time they got there, it was too late. The boy was gone, not even 3 years old, too tiny to endure such a cruel death. McClurkin never speaks of this loss. No one's ever heard him complain. But in his songs, every lyric, every melody, it's there. Songs of faith ring out like silent cries. His belief remains intact. He trusts God heard his prayers and took his son's pain away. Though losing him shattered his heart, at least the boy no longer struggles with chest-tearing agony. McClurkin chose to use his voice to comfort the world just as he comforts himself with faith. 11th, Deborah Lee, ultimate pain, watching her son fall in an instant. Deborah Lee, the powerhouse who ran the BET empire, is a symbol of success in the media world. Every step she took carried the mark of intelligence and strength. But there's one tragedy. No matter how tough she was, she could never overcome: losing her only son. Quinn Coleman, Deborah Lee's only child, was her greatest pride. A talented, sharp man, he built a promising music career. At 31, Quinn was an A&R director at Capitol Records, working with top artists. Deborah watched him rise on his own, never leaning on her shadow. Everything seemed perfect, but life isn't a dream. Tragedy struck with no warning. Summer 2020, a day like any other. Quinn was healthy, working, laughing. Then, in a split second, he collapsed. An aortic aneurysm hit in mere moments, ending his life. No time for goodbyes, no chance to save him. It was the biggest shock of Deborah Lee's life. Her son was gone, leaving an unfillable void. Just the day before, they'd talked, laughed like any warm evening. Now, Quinn was no more. Deborah tried to bury the pain, smiling for the public to show she was still strong. But deep inside, her heart was in pieces. No achievement could fill this loss. 12th, Yolanda Adams, tragedy of losing daughter Taylor Ayanna Crawford. Yolanda Adams, a gifted singer whose inspiring music won over millions with its soulful power. But behind the spotlight, she faced a pain no one could fathom: losing her daughter mere hours after birth. On October 17, 2001, Taylor Ayanna Crawford, Yolanda's firstborn, arrived amid a mother's boundless joy. That happiness didn't last. Hours later, Taylor was diagnosed with infant respiratory distress syndrome, a condition that starved her body of oxygen, unable to sustain life. Yolanda's hopes crumbled. Her day-old daughter faced death. She couldn't imagine it, didn't want to believe it. In those final moments holding her, Yolanda tried to feel her warmth, but it was gone. Watching her baby's body cool, hearing her faint breaths, became a nightmare she'd never escape. Taylor's death shattered dreams and hopes of a complete family. Yolanda lived with that unspeakable pain. Though she carried on with her music career after the shock, that wound stayed raw, never fading. 13th, Prince. Tragedy of losing a son after 7 days. Before hope could ignite Prince, the musical legend, unmatched genius, a man who awed the world with his talent. But even as music's king, he was powerless against the tragedy of losing his firstborn son. In October 1996, when Amir Nelson was born, Prince couldn't contain his bursting joy. This was his long-held dream, a hope for a whole family. But that brief thrill died when doctors revealed the baby had Pfeiffer syndrome type 2, a rare disorder warping his skull and organs with almost no chance of survival. Prince went numb. The Prince name he'd cherished became a dark stain on his life. The family drowned in indescribable pain. Each day dragged on endlessly. Amir, fresh to the world, was too frail to cry. His eyes opened, but couldn't see his parents. Prince didn't leave the hospital. No food, no sleep, just staring at his son in the incubator, praying for a miracle. Day 3, his breathing weakened. Day 5, his tiny heart stuttered. Day 7, Amir took his last breath in his father's arms. 7 days. Just 7. No one can grasp the agony Prince endured. He didn't wail about it publicly, but inside, a piece of his life was gone forever. Music could lift him to glory, but no song could bring Amir back. 14. T.I. Clifford Harris. Wordless pain, losing a daughter at birth. T.I., a hip-hop legend, a king on stage, a man who amazed millions of fans. But behind the victories and glory lies a pain too deep for words, losing his daughter at birth. In May 2004, T.I. and his wife, Tamika "Tiny" Cottle, prepared to welcome their first child. Everyone buzzed with excitement for the baby's arrival. I dreamed of a future filled with joy with his little girl, but that joy never bloomed. It collapsed. His daughter was born premature, and hours after entering the world, she faced a life-or-death fight. Doctors said she had respiratory failure from prematurity, a dire illness that steals the odds from fragile newborns. All that remained were agonizing hours. I didn't leave the hospital. He begged doctors to fight, poured every hope into her, but her life slipped away. Each hour was a battle with helplessness and despair. Then, after mere days, her tiny heart couldn't fight anymore. She left without exploring the world, without ever fully feeling her parents' love. I can't forget this pain. Though a famously tough star, he couldn't stand against this loss. Without her existence, hope for the future felt gone too. The world kept spinning, but T.I.'s life changed forever. That pain clings to him, an unhealing scar. He never speaks of her, the loss too vast, too cruel to share. 15. Dwayne McDuffie. Tragedy of losing a son to congenital heart disease. Dwayne McDuffie, the legendary creator of Static Shock, one of the animated series that transformed the entertainment industry. Yet behind his admirable feats, he faced an unthinkable tragedy, losing his beloved son to a congenital heart defect. In 1992, Dwayne and his wife welcomed their firstborn, Brandon, a sweet little angel, full of hope for a bright future. But soon after birth, they discovered Brandon's heart condition, ventricular septal defect, impairing blood flow, threatening his life from day one. Doctors warned his odds were slim, but nothing could prepare Dwayne for fate's cruelty. Each day, Dwayne watched his son battle heart pain, his frail body weakening by the minute. Hope crumbled as Brandon suffered on. Despite every medical effort, his condition didn't improve. Day by day, that tiny heart faded. Then, on August 20th, 1992, at just 2 years old, it couldn't fight anymore. Dwayne stood helpless as his son slipped away, his dream of a full future in pieces. 16. Wyclef Jean. Pain of losing a daughter at birth. Wyclef Jean, a global music superstar, founder of the Fugees, tied to chart-topping hits. But amid his resounding success, he faced an unimaginable tragedy, losing his daughter right after birth. In January 2001, Wyclef and his wife welcomed their little angel, a lovely girl brimming with promise for a bright future. But hours after her arrival, everything flipped. Doctors found she had Down syndrome and multiple organ failure, a thunderbolt to the family. Short-lived hopes melted into despair. In unbearable pain, they began a life-or-death fight for her. Each day was a struggle. Wyclef couldn't sleep or eat, just prayed for a miracle. But her condition worsened. Gasping breaths, a tiny body too weak to resist the vicious illness. Her pain tore at her father's heart. Every second stretched on, a weight with no escape. Then, one frigid morning, the unavoidable hit. She couldn't fight anymore. Goodbye, Wyclef. Goodbye to a dream unformed. 17. Rev Run, Joseph Simmons. Tragedy of losing a daughter right after birth. Rev Run, a hip-hop legend, founder of Run DMC, shook the music world. With fame and vast influence, he's long been adored. But all that storied career couldn't save him from the crushing pain of losing his baby girl, Victoria Ann. In 2006, the Simmons family got joyful news. Justine, his wife, was pregnant. They eagerly awaited their little angel, Victoria Ann, a darling girl, their grand hope. But that joy was ripped apart when doctors revealed she had omphalocele, a rare defect exposing her abdominal organs, a gravely dangerous state. Her life became a fight for survival, with the family powerless but to pray each moment. Each day, Victoria Ann's state worsened. The family stood by her bedside, hope thin as thread, but fate stayed cruel. Facing that sight, Rev Run couldn't hold back despair. He stood silent, every second an eternity, tormenting his soul in a hell of pain. It was a battle they couldn't win. Finally, on September 26, 2006, soon after birth, Victoria Ann faded in her parents' arms. 18. Regina King. Pain of failing to shield her son from depression. Regina King, a Hollywood legend, spent her career conquering screens and leaving deep marks on viewers. Known for stellar roles and award wins, few know the agony she faced losing her only son in 2022. From the day Ian Alexander Jr. was born, Regina poured effort, love, and sacrifice into raising him. Their bond was the clearest proof of a mother's love, unbreakable by anything. Ian, though born into fame, was her biggest cheerleader. But behind his bright smile hid a massive sorrow no one saw. He wrestled with dark depression, a pain only he knew. A failed marriage in 2007 left lasting scars. Falling short of big DJ success made him feel worthless. That torment ripped at his soul. In the end, on January 19, 2022, Regina got a call that broke her heart. Ian was gone forever, ending his life by hanging. A life of potential, a vibrant young man, destroyed by inner pain no one could see. Regina couldn't share this loss. As a mother, she'd spent her life protecting him, but in the end, it all fell apart. 19. John Legend, heart-wrenching loss of son. Jack Legend, John Legend, a music superstar, famed not just for talent, but for his happy family life with Chrissy Teigen. But in 2020, an unthinkable tragedy struck, taking their firstborn son, Jack Legend, days after birth. When Chrissy was pregnant, everything seemed perfect. The family eagerly awaited a joy-filled future with their little boy. John and Chrissy dreamed of days brimming with laughter and sweet moments. But cruel fate denied them that happiness. Jack arrived too soon, at 20 weeks, facing acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS. Hospital days turned into a life-or-death fight, with the family watching helplessly. Each day was a ceaseless struggle. Doctors came with grim news. Jack's tiny body couldn't bear the pain. Despite devoted care, his frail health couldn't hold. On October 1, 2020, he was gone forever, leaving indescribable pain. They lost Jack after days of desperate battle, shattering all dreams and hopes. Brief memories of Jack became haunting pain for John and Chrissy. 20. Marvin Jones. Daily despair as son. Marv Jr. fought a congenital illness. Marvin Jones, a famed football player, had a shining career and happy family with wife Jasmine. But in 2019, a horrific tragedy hit, taking their baby son, Marv Jr., at just 6 months old as he battled a congenital heart defect. Marv Jr. arrived in 2018, flooding the family with joy. Marvin and Jasmine couldn't hide their happiness. This boy was life's greatest gift. Each day brought fresh hope and cherished moments. But it all crumbled as Marv Jr. faced a fierce fight from birth. Diagnosed with pulmonary valve stenosis, his tiny heart couldn't pump enough blood, keeping him in constant danger. Hospital stays and risky surgeries became their life. Each operation gripped Marvin's heart. Daily, they faced an uneven battle. When doctors said his condition worsened, hope dimmed. Despite every effort, on October 28, 2019, Marv Jr. was gone. After 6 short months, his life ended in pain. As he slipped away, their world shattered. 21st, Nick Cannon, tragedy of losing son. Zen Cannon. Nick Cannon, a renowned host and star, built an impressive career. But in late 2021, his life was ravaged by an unforeseen tragedy. His son, Zen Cannon, passed at 5 months old, leaving a deep, unhealable pain. Zen arrived in June 2021, a new light for Nick and Alyssa Scott. His birth brought uncontainable joy. Everything felt perfect, but months later, a harsh truth emerged. Zen wasn't growing like other kids. Odd signs led to tests, revealing an unbelievable diagnosis: neuroblastoma, a rare cancer in children. A life-or-death fight began. At just 5 months, Zen battled fiercely, in and out of hospitals. The ruthless disease drained him and caused brain fluid buildup, worsening his state. Painful treatments never stopped, but all were in vain. Despite Nick and Alyssa's every effort, their love couldn't keep Zen longer. On December 5, 2021, he was gone forever. 21 stories, 21 tragic lives, losses never forgotten. Each celebrity here faced a pain no one wants to endure. Can you feel the torment in their hearts? If so, leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more tearful tales behind Hollywood's glitzy facade.